So hey guys, this is just going to be a video on like blocking, attacking, just the basics of how you go about this stuff, how you take the least amount of damage, how you deal the most damage, and all that kind of stuff. So the fundamentals of blocking, it's just absorbing damage when you have no other choice, when you can't dodge it, when you can't get out of the way, that kind of stuff. So you can use your knees, your elbows. These things usually take little to no damage. So if you block an oncoming attack, kick, or whatever the hell it is, your knee comes in contact with it and it halves the damage, if not makes the damage nulled. That's the same with the elbow. And then versus the foot, if it comes in contact with the bottom of the foot, then it's going to do the same as the hand or the elbow or the knee or something like that. And you can be quite aggressive with the knees also. You can actually use the knees to deal damage, and you won't take very much damage in most cases when you do this, because the knee reduces the amount of damage taken, and the knee is actually probably one of the more powerful joints to use to actually attack with for some reason. It really should be nerfed, but yeah, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, if ever. The same with the elbows. If you get an elbow to the head, to the chest, wherever, it's going to deal a lot of damage, but you're not going to take much damage for dealing that much damage. So these two ways are really good for dealing damage. I mean, it's the same for kicking. If you kick with your foot, you're going to deal a hell of a lot of damage, but you're not going to take any, or if you do, then it's going to be very minute. I mean, I don't really know why, but the way the game's set up, the game developers, etc., have set this up so that these joints take the least amount of damage and actually deal quite a lot of damage. I mean, you can do heli kicks, and you can set up like a massive knee to the stomach or something, and it's going to deal a lot of damage, and there's not actually a lot that your opponent can do about it if it comes into contact with it. So I mean, I like to start a match by contracting my knee and contracting my hip, and this gives me the chance to block an oncoming rush, maybe set up for a kick for the next turn. If the opponent is coming towards me, I can extend my other hip and then extend this knee, and that'll give me a very powerful kick, and perhaps use the ankles and the other limbs, etc., like turning around and boom, and a kick in the groin, kick in the head, kick in the chest, abs, whatever. And then the same with the elbows. If you can just contract them, you can block with the hands, and then when the opponent comes, boom, you can swing, boom, and you can hit them with the elbow, and then it's actually very unlikely that you'll have damage dealt to you for actually hitting them with the elbow. Even though the joint touches the opponent, it's actually quite unlikely for yourself to take damage, or at least take much damage anyway. But the things you have to take into consideration are the amounts of force that are applied to the knees or the elbows or whatever when you come into contact with your opponents, because when you say hit your opponent with your elbow or your knee, it's just the same as hitting your opponent with any other joint, them hitting you. It's the same thing. It could become fracked, it could become dismembered. So you've really got to watch out for this type of thing, and actually think about what you're doing, not just go in full guns blazing without having a clue about what might happen. You actually have to think about it, otherwise you're going to come out worse off, and then there's not going to be much point actually doing that move in the first place if you're not going to get anything from it, unless you don't really care about winning, and then well good for you. And so another thing, recently I've found that wrists actually get a lot of damage dealt to them for some reason. I mean, if you hit your opponent with your hand outstretched like this, with your wrist extended or held in the outright position, then it's not going to have much damage dealt to it. But for some reason, if you contract it and it comes into contact with your opponent, then it's going to, say, deal between 2 to 10,000 points, maybe more, maybe less, depends what the speed is when it comes in contact with your opponent. And I mean, you could be down a lot, you could lose the match for contracting your wrist onto your opponent. But I mean, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't, it just means time it right and hope for the best, because you can't really take anything for granted with this game. You've got to really make sure that you've got something else up your sleeve if that fails. You've always got to have a second plan, a second option, otherwise you're screwed.